Court, please. On April 22nd of 2025, the defendant, in this case Jose Morales, was found guilty for the murder of Christine Holloway and the subsequent tampering with physical evidence related to the crime of murder by a jury of 12 citizens of this judicial district and beyond all reasonable doubt. The crime was brutal. This crime was a case of domestic violence at its worst. At least 8 separate and distinct blows to her head with an instrument that left distinct 1-inch circular bruises and indentations and fractures in the skull of Christine Holloway. Fractures so severe that a lobe of Christine Holloway's brain was completely avulsed from her head through the gaping hole in the side of her skull. Fractures so severe that a forensic anthropologist was unable to completely rebuild the skull during the post-mortem examination. Numerous other traumatic injuries and fractures to her face, chest, and back. Only 2 things could possibly make this fact pattern worse. First, over the next 36 or so hours, the defendant began a methodical and calculated cleanup of this unimaginable scene. By his own remorseless words, he described covering her head with a cloth so he would not have to look at her each time he stepped over her, not to summon help, but to go out and buy cigarettes or a blunt, or to go on his run to the education bins, or the various other drives he took over those nearly 36 hours. He coldly described soaking up Christine Holloway's blood with towels, wiping away the blood splatter, sorting through the blood-stained clothes and toys that he was bagging and staging on the front deck, picking up pieces of her skull and disposing of them in the kitchen sink garbage disposal, disrobing her body, dragging it to a bathtub, stopping to take a nap, while members of the Holloway family and the Ansonia Police Department frantically searched for Christine. And then ultimately calmly leaving the scene, only to have a short neighborly chat with George O'Mara. Shortly after, the Ansonia Police Department conducted a welfare check at the home looking for Christine. The second aggravating factor of this horrible crime pertains to the disappearance of Vanessa Morales. Now, I am well aware that this trial is not about Vanessa Morales, nor has the defendant been convicted of any crime as to Vanessa Morales. But as this court found when ruling on pretrial motions, the police investigation pertaining to her disappearance was exceedingly intertwined into the police investigation and into the nature and circumstances of Christine Holloway's death. And I believe it is something that the court may consider in its broad discretion when fashioning a sentence within the statutory limits for which the defendant has been convicted.
Well, I'm going to object. This is exactly what the court just ruled on. Exactly.
Attorney Gavin, I appreciate your objection and the communication on the record when the court enters its decision as to whether or not the court.
Thank you.
By all direct and circumstantial evidence presented in this case, together with the reasonable inferences that may be developed from the evidence, 14-month-old Vanessa Morales was last seen in the presence of the defendant and her mother in the early morning hours of December 2nd, 2019.
Your Honor, this is so far afield from what the court just ordered here. This is attempting to influence this court inappropriately in regard to a matter that is not before the court. And you've instructed the state not to do that, as well as the other witnesses.
Attorney Stein, I'm going to bring you back to the court's instruction relative to the interplay. That was with respect to the investigation. I will just note for the record that the court is here to sentence the defendant on the charge of murder and the charge of tampering with evidence. This court will not be taking into consideration the fact that missing child Vanessa is in any way, shape, or form related to any conduct with respect to the defendant. The defendant is not charged relative to Vanessa Morales, and the state's charges and the jury's verdict are not based on any relation to Vanessa Morales.
I understand, Your Honor.
Strictly instructed, and counsel was strictly instructed, and the court had ruled on that. So with respect to sentencing, please move forward with relative to any facts concerning this particular verdict.
I understand, Your Honor, but I believe that the court consider all aggravating as well as mitigating factors with regard to the intertwined nature of these facts. But I will move on. In a moment, Your Honor is going to hear from members of the family of Christine Holloway. They will describe for you not only the pain, loss, and anger that they felt when this crime occurred over 5.5 years ago. They will describe for you their continued pain and anguish that they have endured throughout this entire process. In addition to having to sit and live through a trial on the merits of this case, the family endured a 3-month police investigation that was necessary to secure an arrest warrant before the defendant was ultimately arrested and arraigned in February of 2020. However, before anything of substance could occur, COVID threw our legal system as well as our world into complete disarray. By the time the world restarted and this case began moving forward, Mr. Morales changed lawyers. It took time for Mr. Morales to secure Attorney Gavin, and then time for Attorney Gavin to come up to speed in a case of this magnitude. The process has been painfully slow to a family demanding answers and justice. They had to endure listening to the defendant deliver a self-serving, nonsensical story, not supported by any other reliable or credible evidence. And now the process is almost over, and Your Honor will soon sentence Mr. Morales. I know no matter what the sentence this court imposes, it will feel empty and hollow to the Holloway family because they still do not have answers. The only person with the answers is Jose Morales. It is unfortunate that the only answers that Mr. Morales provided during the pendency of this entire case were designed to deflect his personal responsibility for this unspeakable crime, and were so unbelievable that a 12-person jury of his peers convicted him of the crime of murder and tampering with physical evidence in only 2.5 hours of deliberation following a nearly 2-week trial. This matter is still very raw to them, and with the court's permission and with the assistance of Ms. Fountain, the victim's advocate, I would like to present them to you now. I'll start first with Anna Radinsky.
I am going to ask you to name on the record.
My name is Anna Radonsky.